So, okay, so let's start. Hey, everybody, it is 5 p.m. Eastern. Welcome to my show. I am Dr. Lucy McBride, primary care doctor in Washington, D.C., joining you live, unscripted, unedited, with my friend, Jessi Gold. Jessi is a psychiatrist, practicing psychiatrist. She is a nationally recognized mental health expert, and she is the author of an incredible book called How Do You Feel?, whose cover is just, I love it. And so I thought that she would be the perfect guest to bring on today to talk about how to best manage our emotional health, which then affects our physical health, during times of collective trauma and stress and crisis. I think we all can agree that the country feels very unsettled. Political violence has become like commonplace. And if you're anything like my patients or me, you could use a little advice. So Jessi, thank you so much for joining me on the
Yeah.
show.
Yeah. I was like, I wore this because, everybody's fine, fine. We're totally fine, aren't we? Um, you know, I'm happy to be here. I wish it was under different circumstances. I feel like we're always having to talk when things are rough for the world, but it's just the way it is. And when I cross your mind as someone who would be helpful, which I think is a good thing, but is also kind of sad.
No, it's like who can I talk to? Who can I show to my readers and listeners that is someone who models um vulnerability for the purpose of helping other people, but also for the purpose of helping yourself. I think we can all agree that pretending like things are okay, pretending like nothing to see here, or that somehow the political stuff online doesn't affect you is just not helpful. In fact, it can make it worse. So, can you talk a bit about that for us, Jessi? Like, talk to me about the relevance of like naming the fact that this is affecting you. You may feel some people feel guilty, like, oh, I'm not, I wasn't shot, I wasn't, I didn't lose my husband. Like, so there, why should I be upset? But talk to me about what that does when we deny ourselves the feelings.
Yeah. So the last thing you just were mentioning is sort of like what some people call like the guilt Olympics or the grief Olympics, which is
Yeah.
like somebody else always has it worse. So like we're doctors, we listen to really hard stuff. We're never gonna have the worst problem. If you have someone in your life who's actively struggling, if you know someone who's actively struggled, you're always gonna compare to that. You're gonna be like, well, I don't have cancer. Well, I didn't experience this. Where, that's unhelpful because to me, and as I always tell patients, the worst problem is your own problem. Like, I know that that sounds selfish in a way, but it just means that, like, you shouldn't be comparing about everything. All we do is compare. This wasn't fair. This person has it worse. Social media showed them happy or angry or sad. So maybe I should be happy or angry or sad. So we kind of have to look at, like, that part for sure. But in terms of naming it, it's just realistic. Like, who hasn't gone to work in the past couple weeks or even like, gosh, like years at this point and had the world affecting how they were functioning? Like, it is unrealistic to do our job in a bubble because we do not exist in a bubble. Like, there's that show Severance, right? Like, where you just like somehow magically go to work, don't remember, have a complete separation. That doesn't work. And the reason it's a show and it's entertaining is because we know it can't work. And if you don't name it, all it's doing is like sort of like bubbling under the surface, and you're interacting with people and your brain is saying like, I should focus on this and I should do my job and I should do a spreadsheet, but also I'm pissed and I saw that video and it made me sad and angry and whatever. And it's like this rising current until you can't concentrate. You're angry at your colleagues. It has nothing to do with them. You're not doing work the way you want to. You're like kind of taking it out on the nice people, like your admin, and I think it's really important to be like, listen, the world's really messy and it's been really hard for me. And if I'm angry or I'm sad or I'm not doing things at the speed I usually do, I just want you to know, like, I'm struggling. I imagine you are too. I just wanted to name it so we could be on the same page. And I think people get scared doing that too because you can't control the outside world. And so it feels like if you're naming it, you're also saying like somehow you're gonna make it better. You don't have to make it better. Like you can also say, like, I have no control over what is going on in a lot of this stuff. And yet it's still affecting me and it's affecting all of us.
These are great points. I think, we talk in medicine about, anxiety disorders, right? We talk about depressive disorders. We talk about PTSD as these sort of diagnosable conditions that have, you know, clinical criteria based on the DSM, which is the Diagnostic and Statistical Manual for Mental Health Disorders. I think some of my patients get sort of tripped up when they're talking to me about their own experience of anxiety or fear or grief or worry. Um, and they will, in a way, deprive themselves permission to have complicated feelings because they aren't like their brother who had serious depressive disorder or their uncle who had a substance use disorder. And what I commonly recommend to people, and I wonder what you think about this, is thinking about these things on a continuum. You don't have to be sort of curled up in bed and non-functional to have a mood that is low enough to warrant sort of self-compassion and help from other people. You don't have to be having panic attacks to be considered anxious enough to pay attention to meeting your basic needs. Do you see patients who are like this, or or because you're a psychiatrist, you see people who already have like the formal diagnosis? Or tell me about that sort of
Yeah,
landscape.
I mean, I think that social media and TikTok in particular has made that more complicated for me. So I skew towards younger population, often college students, often healthcare workers. But like when you're on social media and you're like in an algorithm where you're like, I'm sad, and then the algorithm starts taking you down sad videos, but also all those videos are stories and those stories are pretty extreme and those stories are talking about depression, you're then either affirmed and you say, I have depression, or the opposite. And you go, well, I'm just a little bit sad, so it doesn't matter. Right. And so I think that social media has like this desire to name things. And that's not wrong because I'm sure there are plenty of people who follow you who've had conversations with you where naming things is really helpful, where getting someone to even say, I don't know, is as helpful as naming something. Right. And so I get that desire, but start with naming the feeling instead of the diagnosis. Right. So most of the time when people say I'm depressed, they don't actually mean they're clinically depressed. They mean they're sad. And we're bad with feelings words because no one taught them to us when we were kids and no one let us have feelings as kids. It's gendered, but both genders have a lot. So men aren't supposed to have feelings maybe. And then females are like not supposed to have big ones because they'll be judged for big ones. So it's all over the spectrum on like how culture and gender wrap up in how emotions are perceived and how we deal with them. But really, like, naming it, it's information. Like I said to somebody, like, anxiety isn't problematic. Like I put it up, I was in a leadership course and we were talking about change. And I said, well, when people don't like change, they get anxious. And the person was like, I'm not writing anxiety. Like, that's judgmental and clinical. And I was like, I don't mean it. I meant it like it's information. You don't like change. So your body's saying, I don't like change. I don't like change. And it's making me fearful and worried and concerned. And what that's telling you is, you have something to be worried and concerned about, and that's okay, right? Being angry tells you something. Being sad tells you something. The movie Inside Out and Inside Out 2, like the reason I wear the shirt, perfect for this. And I'll have patients watch it a lot because it just teaches you like every emotion has a purpose and there's no good or bad emotions and they just teach you things. But like I would start with saying like, I feel sad. Like, what's up with that?
I love it. Yeah, I think we are conditioned, and certainly in like our generation and up, to not name feelings or to think of them as like primary killers, like happy, sad, mad. I have a chart in my exam room that's like the periodic table of emotions, so that people, when they're waiting and they're in their gown and on the table, because doctors love making people wait, right? Inappropriately, right? Like that's
And
our
as
specialty.
much as you try, I'm sure you're
Right. We,
always
we
on
love
time,
we
Lucy.
love making we love lording power over people and making them wait in like cold exams. So they can look at the periodic table of emotions. And almost every day someone says to me, "Oh my gosh, I'm here, I'm here, I'm here," right? So it is something that I think you can gain a literacy about your interiority. And as you said, not every emotion is bad, and there's good and bad sides. Like having anxiety allows you to jump, back onto the curb to not get hit by the car, right? That's coming at you. It allows you to pay your taxes on time. But anxiety, when it is poured into your bloodstream in a sustained way and is causing physical symptoms, emotional symptoms, behavioral symptoms that are problematic, that's when we call it a name. But it doesn't just having a name to it doesn't mean that the junior varsity version of it doesn't warrant some attention, right?
For sure. Yeah. I mean, and it's information, but it's also not something that you need to just get rid of, right? So I think our second like reaction besides like, "Oh, I have a feeling, like why do I have this feeling?" is also like, "Make it go away." And I do that. I'm like very often I'm an overworker to not have feelings. I do all sorts of things like despite being a person who literally went to school for feelings, right? Like I don't like big feelings either. They overwhelm you. You can't do stuff. And when you talk to people about like when you ask them how they're doing and they say fine and okay, at work a lot of the times they say that because they're often it is just casual conversation, but they're also afraid that if they say the right like how they actually are feeling, it'll derail their day, it'll derail the conversation, and they'll be judged by the other person for being like too much, right? And so
Right.
we have this like urge to go like, yep, like I have anxiety, bye bye anxiety. And really, if you sat with it and let it be and didn't judge it and then figured out what you wanted to do about it, but didn't do that immediately, it would be better.
Someone's asking a great question, Tom Vile. What about when you feel helpless? Whether it's about what's going on in the world or when someone you love is suffering because of health issues. I wrote my newsletter today about sort of a broad frame I present to patients. It's not like it's not formal, right? When I'm talking to a real human being, but when we're talking about managing distress, and one of the first steps is as we talked about, naming the feelings, validating your feelings, giving yourself permission to feel. The second part of that was acceptance. Can you talk about acceptance, Jessi, and the feelings of helplessness and how acceptance and helplessness can go together? Like it can feel ironic to accept something that can make you feel more helpless, but how can you talk about those concepts?
Yeah. I mean, this is why things like the serenity prayer have been so helpful for so long.
Right.
So it is co-opted and used most regularly in substance use, but it's also used in chronic illness because you don't know when another like lupus episode is going to come or you're going to be sick with your diabetes, whatever it is. Like it can be helpful to sort of say, I have control over these things. I don't have control over these things. How do I work on it? And naming that alone is really helpful. So when somebody feels you said helpless, like I
Helpless.
often say, like, write down everything that's worrying you right now and circle then look at it, then circle the things you actually have control over or cross out the ones you don't or both and start there because even just the littlest bit of self-efficacy, like even just the littlest bit of hope that kind of counters the helplessness will make you feel a lot better. And there's an acceptance to that too, which is to accept, right? So like literally the surrounding person accept the things I cannot change and the courage to change the things I can, right? And the wisdom to know the difference. And accepting is basically saying, like, I don't have the ability to control like the outcome of the political situation or how like that applies to my day-to-day work sometimes. Like, but you do have an ability to control your feelings, really, or your way you relate to other people or how you support that person. Like maybe you can't fix your loved one and make them feel better, but I'm sure that you're showing up for them in a way that feels good to you and that feels good to them and that you feel like you're doing something. And there's ways to like, people often do things like in tragedies like donate money or like do advocacy related stuff for the same reason because you can't stop the fire, but like if you gave money and that could be used to help people rebuild, it feels good to do something. And so there's an acceptance in I can't do that, but I can do this. That makes a big difference in sort of like a spirally mindset where you're just so focused on the fact that your brain has an addiction, your partner is ill, the world is really complicated and messy, and you have to be able to kind of be like, oh, okay, I need to take a break or I need to accept that this is the way it is. And it'll help, I think. It sounds silly and almost too simple. And I think a lot of these things do, but they're so simple we don't do them.
I think that's right. Well, I also think that acceptance is a complicated concept for people, insofar as it can feel like resignation or it can feel like giving up. Um, when in actuality, and this requires some like real clarity of thought, right? Because when we're trying to accept something we can't control, like you're by definition feeling out of control. But to me, acceptance is really about reallocating our precious resources,
Mhm.
time, energy, brain space, money, reallocating our resources and take it and to things that where we do have agency or self-efficacy. Because when you I think for a lot of people with anxiety, and I am totally guilty of this too, the 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 desire to try to control things when you're feeling out of control, is so strong, right? Like I will, you know, mop the, vacuum the floors and organize my like sock drawer when, things are going crazy, or worse, right? Like I will overwork. I will, I'm an over functioner, right? When I'm feeling vulnerable instead of feeling the feelings. And I think accepting that you cannot change things, while it feels like resignation, can actually be an investment in working on things you can control. And sometimes it's just riding through the feeling. Like the feelings, feelings can't hurt you.
Hmm. Yeah, I mean, I think if you have any bit of anxiety, not just clinical, just worry, like having control is the way that we all try to get rid of that. Planning, being able to guess what's happening next, predicting the future. But anxiety comes from not knowing the future, right? And so there's this balance of like, how much can you predict or how much can you plan? Because you could plan and your flight gets canceled. Now what, right? And so we have to be kind of an ability to have some flexibility around that, as well as like, I know I need to plan some. It makes me feel better. But I also need to acknowledge that sometimes things happen and I can't plan as much as I want. Or sometimes something bad happens and it will derail me in some capacity because I will feel things. And that's okay.
Can you talk about dialectics? I find that some of the most resilient patients I have, and I work on this actually myself, is holding two seemingly opposite truths in your same head, right? Like, for example, like political violence is a very serious problem in this country, and I am safe today.
Mm.
Or like, talk to me about dialectics and what they mean for an individual and how they can help you, um, you know, psychologically.
Yeah, I'm a big fan of all things dialectics. I had to, it means both things are true, right? Like it's not all good, it's not all bad, it's kind of nuanced.
It's
And we
actually
don't
kind
like
of like how we should be like how our
how
political world can.
everyone should be.
Well, DBT, dialectical behavioral therapy, should actually be like cut and paste on the entire country, but that's an aside.
Yeah, I mean, and that originated from a patient who was trying to understand herself and no one else had given her the tools, and so she invented them and then made it one of the most popular therapies that's used, like dialectical behavioral therapy. That's an aside. But really, for me, it's like you can be both happy and sad. There can be bad things in the world, but you also can find joy, right? And I think that sometimes people feel like you aren't allowed to have joy when things are bad, or like there is no room for hope in the context of like things that feel more helpless. But both things can be true. Like there could be bad news that affects you, and today you had like something good happen that made you feel better. Like your friend sent you a nice text message and it was nice to hear from them. It doesn't have to be huge, right? And I
Yeah.
think it's important that people recognize that too, that like two things can be true and you don't need to sit in the extremes all the time. I think social media pulls you to the extremes too, as we have this conversation on a form of social media, but you get pulled into an algorithm or you get pulled into comments or whatever, and it's going to be not nuanced. And so then you'll say, well, how can I feel good when all of this is so bad? And I hear that so often from people who feel really deeply. I'm an empath. So at the world, like every day, I have to be like, I can't fix everybody. Like it's not doable. Like I care about people and I need to care about myself, right? Like that's a dialectic too, to be honest. And so I think we have to just be mindful that some of the stuff we consume makes it feel like it's impossible to hold two things at the same time. It's not discounting the other thing. And I know too that you could say there's privilege in having a dialectic. And there probably is in some capacity because it might be hard to see that. But there are people in prison who have hope, right? Like and they might be having a life sentence. There are people who are like Viktor Frankl and were in the Holocaust and wrote about how finding meaning and purpose sustained him through there can't be many other worse things, right? And I think that like recognizing that that's a terrible thing that's happening and people survive through finding the good, through finding meaning, through having the balance isn't to negate the truth that you're experiencing or negate the truth that other people around you are experiencing, but to say like I can't live in just that. Like I have to find a way to process that, feel that, exist in that, and notice the good.
Jessi, what are some like practical sort of tips? Which sounds too quaint to say tips, but practical tips. It sounds like to help people with emotional regulation, mindfulness, um, and sort of mental, physical, and behavioral. That's basically like walk
How
me
do you
through
do your
your
job? Like what do
residency.
you do every day in your job?
Walk me through your residency training and experience in your career as a psychiatrist in the next 20 minutes.
I mean, it's really like I'd be also like honestly curious like what you do for you. I'm a big believer that we have made a mistake assuming there's a one size fits all answer to this question. And so you might read that somebody studied mindfulness and you might have been like me and tried 75 ways to Tuesday to do mindfulness and you still don't like it. That's okay. Like
Okay.
I've had patients come to me and be like, I'm bad at coping. And I'm like, that is not a thing. You just haven't found the right things, right? And there might be a right thing always for you, but there also might be a right thing at the right time, and you need a toolkit of things to go to. And so, for me, the simplest thing is in my desk in my office. I'm not at home right now. Otherwise, I would show you how ridiculous it is. I have all sorts of like stress balls, stress putty, fidget spinnery things, anything that if I'm feeling activated in a meeting or I'm even feeling distracted by a meeting or my brain is thinking about the world when it's supposed to be thinking about the meeting, I play around with that stuff. You can't see my hands. Like right now I'm holding my phone because I'm not in an advanced setting with the setup because I'm traveling, but like usually you can't see my hands because they're down here unless I'm waving at you. So you can do whatever you want under a screen. The same thing is true with like putting a sticky note of something that makes you feel good, like a quote or something that's a reminder, like remember you're really good at your job, like whatever you need. That isn't anywhere anybody can see it. And so that can be really helpful. Right across from me, in my office, I also have the Serenity Prayer on the wall for the same reason, because I will literally be like, I'm spinning about something I don't have control over. For me, often it's that I can't fix the entire healthcare system. And I am going to be mad in my job if I think about the healthcare system all the time instead of the patient in front of me and how I can make them feel better. And so, like, little reminders like that can be really helpful for me. I find a lot of people like deep breathing. I think it's because it's simple and most people can't see you do it. So, exhaling longer than you inhale is basically the gist of deep breathing, whether you call that box breathing, whether you do it for 4-4, breathing in between, having an extra, whatever it is, exhale longer than you inhale, physically like changes your body and you're sort of like, there's a lot of evidence on this and like what it's actually doing like in your physiology to make you feel better, but nobody knows when you exhale longer than you inhale. Like I think a lot of people's concern is also like, I feel activated at work. I have no one to talk to. I don't want to bring this up. I want to process it myself. Like, how do I deal with it? Like, you need little ways to cope in between things in your office that people can't see. And it would be great if all of us could go run 40 miles, but that's not going to work for most of us. And most of us don't have time for that either. I also really like, there's a lot of evidence on things like gratitude are three good things. And I think I'm the least woo woo person for what I do. Very cynical, very sarcastic. The idea that I would even tell you this works is like a big thing for me. But it's because our brains are trained to, like, evolutionarily remember the bad thing. Like, if you ate a poison berry, you shouldn't eat another poison berry, so you should remember that you ate the poison berry. It doesn't matter that before you had the poison berry, like, you had a really fun time with your friend, right? Like, that doesn't matter evolutionarily because the fun doesn't have anything to do with saving your life. So your brain's like, "Remember that, remember that, remember that," and so all it's doing by doing gratitude or trying to remember some good things about your day is the dialectic, right? It's shifting you away from your brain going bad, 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 and saying like, oh, there was also some good. And it's not toxic positivity because there's a desire for people when I say stuff like this to be like, ugh, all your like, you want me to be positive? Nothing's positive. I am not discounting the bad. The medical system is bad. And I really like my patients and I'm going to stick with it for now, right? Like those things are true. So I think it's important for people to recognize that that's not ignoring the hard stuff or the bad stuff. And it's not discounting that in a way that somehow makes you a bad human, a bad person, etc. All it's doing is shifting you. And then lastly, I'll say news and social media break, 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 break. There's literally no such thing as mindless scrolling or like the doom thing really is that you are watching things that you shouldn't be watching and having access to things that none of us should have ever seen. And it is going to traumatize you. There's like evidence after evidence after evidence of watching that stuff on TV on loops, 9/11, George Floyd, the assassination of JFK, like any of these things that were public, which are way worse now on social media, like getting to see over and over and over is traumatic for everyone, but in particular groups that resonate with it for one reason or another, right? And so important to realize like you're watching your news on your little phone. None of that's happy. I start on like happy dog videos and then I end up in my dog needs to be rescued videos and like I don't know how I get there. So if that's where my happy dog algorithm takes me, where does like the news algorithm take you? So pay attention to how you feel when you're like scrolling. Pay attention to your sleep. I'm a big fan of if you need it to actually move your phone out of your bedroom or use a regular alarm clock because it's the last thing you look at and the first thing you look at. And I had to train myself out of that. I can do it now, but I had to move it. I'm also a big fan of like, am I grinding my teeth? What is that telling me? Like, you will regularly be scrolling and watching a video and you're like gnawing at yourself and have no idea that you're doing it. And that's actually you saying, like, no, right? And so paying attention to what your body's doing and your brain is doing and your feelings are doing while you scroll, while you watch the news, taking breaks, being okay taking breaks. I think that sometimes those of us who do fields where the world really impacts them, right? So if I don't know what's going on in the news and a patient comes in to see me as a psychiatrist, I'm not actually doing my duty because most of the things that are going on in the world affect people's mental health exactly for the reasons that we're talking about. But it doesn't mean I have to watch all day, every day. I just need to know the gist. I don't need to see the video. I just need to know what happened, right? So you have to be able to still put boundaries around what you're doing, even if knowing it is important to who you are as a person, is important to your job, is important to you as an advocate, whatever it is. You can put boundaries on what you digest, how you digest it, how often you digest it, and it doesn't make you a bad person. And I think people think that if they turn off their phone or they don't comment or they don't say like it makes them somehow horrible as like a human being. And that's not true. You're actually taking care of you to be a better human being.
Yeah, I think that's such a good point that self-care is not indulgent. It's strategic, right? I mean, then you can be a better, you know, spouse, employee,
Yeah.
boss, worker. Um, I love what you talked about this with the media and the social media and the sort of curfews and boundaries around consumption there. I don't think I realized until recently how, like, I thought that scrolling at night, not necessarily on doomy things, just on, like, even on fun things, um, was so overstimulating. I also didn't realize, and you may laugh, but until, like, this morning, because I did this morning for the first time since I can remember, how much I was waking up and then looking immediately at my phone, and I convinced myself that it was just because, you gotta check your email, I gotta check in with my electronic portal to see if patient messages have come in, but it basically is like a way of just scanning for danger. Scanning, scanning, scanning. It's like you're at the lighthouse, and I realized after a conversation with somebody earlier this week, apropos what we're talking about here, that my habit of waking up and immediately checking in with all of my different portals, patient portal, family, group text, email, is just sort of a vigilance
Mhm.
that was not helping. So today, literally today was the first day I woke up and I vowed to myself not to look at my phone. And I had 15 minutes in my bed where I was just drinking my coffee and that's all I did. And that was like, that sounds like maybe small but it actually changed my kind of energy walking into work today. I also wasn't late to work. I'm always late. I wasn't late today and I wasn't like it wasn't like I was shot out of a cannon in the morning. Like, I
Yeah.
came in and I was actually kind of, like, calm. So, I think that there are really I think the theme of what I'm trying to say is that there's more agency than you think. That you may have more agency than you think. Making small, little, teeny changes can make a difference. We love, as doctors, recommending exercise to manage stress, limiting alcohol and caffeine, and, nourishing your body. All those things matter.
Yeah.
I also think little things that kind of connects to where you are, like, or, little things can make a big difference. I noticed that I carry a lot of tension in my mid back. Like, when my middle, like, between my scapula, when it starts, like, crunching a little bit, I'm like, there's something that, like, it's like my check
You're
engine light.
like, "Oh,
It's my check engine light. In fact, I wrote a piece last year about how I ignored it so long that I had a pinched nerve, like, and it was pinching and raining down my
Lucy, you
neck,
know
and
I have thoughts about that."
I ignored it, and I'm like, "Oh, it's just stress," and I went to PT, and then I ignored it some more, and then the PT is like, "Come back once a week." I'm like, "Ah, she doesn't know what she's talking about," and I didn't go to PT. Got worse. MRI showed a pinched nerve. So, do as I say, not as I do. My point is, whenever I feel when I feel that coming on, I'm like, "Okay, something's going on." Like, I'm too busy. I haven't taken enough time to kind of breathe, do my 4-7-8 breathing. And what I actually do is I have a yoga mat under the little chair in my office, and I have one at home in my bedroom, and I will just lie on it on a block, those yoga blocks,
Yep.
and I'll lie on it with the yoga block like positioned sort of like at the bra strap area, and just like lie on it and like open up my chest, and it just like it opens up those muscles and it feels really good, and it's like 5 minutes.
Mhm.
And it makes a huge difference. I don't have time to go on long runs. I don't even wanna really run. I used to run. But for me, it's like the small little moments of, like, sort of peace
Yeah, I
and
used to
giving
call
yourself
it
permission just being.
when I was little, I used to call them little moments of win, and I didn't realize that, like, I was actually doing anything logical. I just would be like, "Oh, like, the beach makes me feel nice, and I like the sand, and I like water." Like, I would just be like, "That's a win," and I didn't really think about it, and I must have been doing it to protect against how perfectionist and overachiever I was and, like, how often I felt like I was failing, and so I was like, I'm gonna make wins," but it it was the same thing, right? Like, I think so many people I see, and I'm sure you see this in patients all the time, is like, I don't have time to take care of me. I have to take care of my family. I have to take care of my like loved one who's older that needs help. I have to take care of my students. I have to take care of my patients. I have to take whatever it is. We're all caregivers in some way or another. It could be your pet. My pet is chronically ill and she's a lot. Like, I get it, right? I think the problem is that we're just viewing it like I need to go run a marathon. Like, there are people who need to run a marathon, like wouldn't be happy if they didn't run a marathon. Like, it is very necessary to their well-being and they'll prioritize that. And that's okay. I have two, my mentor from med school and another friend are like that. They could not function if that wasn't what they were doing. Most of us just need some time for us. Like, daily, ideally, like a ritual that might feel good or something to turn to when you're not feeling good, the transition time driving home, a walk in the middle of the day instead of eating your lunch at your desk, like whatever it is, like these little changes can actually make a big difference. And sometimes I feel like people are like, what dumb ideas you give me. How much school did you go to tell me these dumb things? And I'm like, yeah, they are dumb, but I had to learn them all myself as a human too. Like, and when I started to realize, like, when I started to do them, I was like, oh, they're dumb, but they work. Like, that's why they kept telling me to do them, or, whatever. Like, even today, like, literally, my therapist was like, where is all that going at the end of the day? Like you absorb stuff like a sponge, and then where does it go so you don't just break the sponge? And I was like, well, I watch dumb TV. And she said, well, that's sort of like putting the wet sponge just kind of hanging out and it's dripping dry, but no one's really helping it get better. Like you think it's helpful because it's distracting you, but it's not actually letting go of any of that. Like you need a thing to let go of that. What are you doing? And like I literally, this is my job, and I still have to have somebody tell me that, right? Because I'm like, oh, well, I'm good. Like, the world is messy, and I just watch dumb TV. And I literally watch television that's made for 14-year-olds. Like, I'm just waiting for the next summer I turn pretty, right? Like, I watch shows made for 14-year-olds because it's so simple and distracting and nice, and I enjoy that. And I'll watch 90 sitcoms for the same reason, right? But it's not an active way of loosening the tension or making yourself feel better. And some of them are so simple, like like using your block and sitting there for 5 minutes will actually wring out the sponge. Going for a 15-minute walk with no music, no podcast is actually mindfulness. It doesn't have to be meditating. It can be pretty simple, you know?
What do you tell people about when it's time to get professional help? Like, when is it time to ask or to suggest to someone you love that, they need either help from a medical professional like you, or they need a therapist, or they need AA, or they need a support group? Like, where does that line get drawn in your mind?
Yeah. So first, like there's a privilege in being able to afford help, get help, have access to help. So let me just start there because I'm going to lead from the idea that when you want help, you can find help. So I'm going to say that first, right? And then I'm going to jump from there. um, what in our diagnostic manual, which we mentioned earlier, there are symptoms, sure, but the part that I actually think is most helpful for this is the thing that all of our diagnoses have, which is it impacting your day-to-day life? Is it getting worse? And is it just bad enough to begin with, right? Like it is it so severe that you're already having like suicidal thoughts as in depression that you're just like, well, I need to go see someone. This is really bad. My safety is at risk, right? Or did you used to have one panic attack and now you have four and now you're like, what's going on there? Or are there things that you want to be doing that you're not doing? Like you stopped hanging out with friends, or you stopped enjoying your day-to-day life, or there like your anxiety gets in the way of you leaving your house, or getting up, your depression gets in the way of you getting up in the morning, right? Like these things that like symptoms are symptoms. Like I can rattle them off. You can look them up. But the things that really I think matter are like when you go into like how bad is it? How much is it interfering with your life? How long has it been going on also too, right? So we discussed feelings. Like feelings are temporary, depression is not. Like the reason all of our diagnostic criteria have time frames is because we're trying to distinguish between normal feelings and pathology. And it's imperfect, which is why it also says how much is it interfering with your life, because you might tell me that my anxiety is so bad I can't function and it's only been 2 days. If you want to come talk to me then, come talk to me then. Like I've never said to someone like, "Ooh, why are you here?" But I will say to someone like, "You don't need meds," and like, "Have you tried this or that or whatever?" But that's my job. Like if you end up in the wrong door, or you go to your primary care doctor and they can help you with this kind of thing too, or a friend who might have experience with this stuff, or a family member, like our job is to point you in the right direction. Our job isn't to say like, I know right and this is the only answer. And just because I can prescribe, I'm going to prescribe. Like I'm going to say, thank you so much for being curious about yourself and ending up here. Like, why was it so bad that you needed to come in? Like, tell me more about that. And if you're like, well, I can't function. It's only been 2 days and I know that's ridiculous, but I can't do the things I want to do and it needs to stop because I want to do those things. I'm going to help you figure out how to do those things. It might not be with me because I'm not a therapist, just because of insurance billing and stuff like that, but like little things that nobody else needs to understand. But, I think that our job is to get you to the right door and to warm hand off you to the right door and to make sure that like nobody's saying like, and if somebody said like, why are you here? You're here too early. I have judgments about that provider, but I'll try to be nice from here.
I love that. Basically, I think you're saying I think so. If your mood, degree of anxiety, or sort of relationships with alcohol, food, other people are problematic enough that it's interfering with your quality of life, it's time to think about asking for help. It's so difficult, obviously, in this landscape, as you said, given lack of access, given that a lot of insurance companies don't cover mental health care, or if they do, it's really pathetic, like the coverage.
Like, I bet
And
most of you're doing mental health all the time, I bet,
oh
because of
yeah,
that.
yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, yeah, yeah. I mean, it's like I make it. I mean, to me. It's
You
mental
like
health
it.
is part of the whole person. It's not
Yeah.
separate and distinct, but
Also
also
insurance's fault.
and also it's so hard to get in, right? I mean, for me to get a patient who's in crisis or not in crisis into a good therapist, I have to like text that therapist and help them get in. It's just very difficult.
Yeah.
Um, I also live in Washington D.C., so there's a big need, right? Um, there's a need everywhere. So what other kind of like parting wisdom do you have, Jessi Gold? Dr. Gold has written this book called "How Do You Feel?" And I really at some other time I'm going to talk to you about the book and the how it was and how it is and
Sure.
talking to
I
your
guest
mother book
blogged
club.
for you for those of you who didn't know that. I did guest blog around that time too.
Oh, you did a guest blog for me.
Yep.
Yeah, yeah, you're like prolific. What
I
would you?
used to be more prolific. It's usually a sign of how anxious. Like either I'm so anxious that I need to write to like get it out. And so like in COVID, my best friend was like, you okay? And I'm like, yeah, I'm great. I'm really great. And she's like, why'd you write 25 pieces this week? And I'm like, good point. And then sometimes it's the opposite. And I sort of like slow down on the extra stuff because all I can do is like work. And I'm like, I had nothing else. But parting wisdom.
Parting
Um,
wisdom for all of us mortals here who need as much help as we can get managing the vulnerability of this time.
I wish we still had Mr. Rogers
Oh,
because the
and Robert
things.
Redford.
Yeah, that's true too. But the things that like he talked about
Yeah.
because he had child psych background were like the world is really hard and you're allowed to be impacted by the world. It doesn't make you weak. It doesn't make you a bad person. It doesn't make you somehow unable to be resilient and tolerate things that other people can. The world is going to affect you. Don't judge yourself for it. Feelings aren't like good or bad. Feelings just are information. And try to figure out like something every day that you do for you in the context of a messy world because as we discussed, that's something you have control over, right? Like, what can you control? Well, I can control that my back hurts when I feel anxious. I'm gonna or like feel bad. I'm gonna lie down and take care of it. What can I control? Well, all I keep spiraling about is the bad stuff in my day. I can control my brain thinking about a good thing. Oh, what can I control? Well, I need a place to wring it out. Is that journaling? Is that talking to a friend? Is that whatever that is? I think it's important. I think in times like these, like sort of parallel play can also be kind of helpful. And what I mean by that is like hanging out with people, but not talking about this stuff. Like sometimes you need to, and I get it and it feels supportive, but sometimes we like egg each other on to get worse. And like, what would it be like to go to a coffee shop like you used to go to in college and work next to your friend instead of talking about the world? Like you're still with them, they're still there. What would it be like to like read a book in the same room as someone so you know you have a friend and you have support and you can talk to them, but you don't have to, right? Like, and you don't, the purpose is not to go hang out with your friend and tell them about the world and feel bad because that's really easy to do. And like sometimes you need that. And sometimes you just need to know you have a friend and have someone there and that you can do other things for you. And if you're a person who still needs to be around people for that, like that's why kids kind of parallel play and it can be helpful.
Jessi, you're great. I'm so glad that you joined me from it's your parents' house in New
Yeah, I'm
Jersey.
hanging out in Jersey. I'm
Yes.
usually in Memphis, Tennessee, which, as you know, is also in the news. But I that's where I usually am. I love Memphis. I'm a big fan of Memphis, as I'm sure you are as of Washington, D.C. There's a lot of beauty in a city like that with that kind of culture. So
Well,
you'll have to
Dr.
come
Gold,
visit.
you're the chief wellness officer at this big hospital system. It's such a great it seems like a great role for you. And I'm just so grateful you joined us today and for your wisdom and humor and like touch of irreverence, which I totally appreciate. Like I'm also a little bit of a cynic. Like I'm so not woo woo, but like I'll bring it on when I need to.
Oh,
When
yeah,
it's
and I think sarcasm and humor, like,
oh
sometimes people think, like, you can't think things are funny when things are sad. Like, if I didn't have sarcasm and humor, like, I swear,
oh gosh.
I don't know what I would do with my life. Most people in medicine have, like, a dark humor, and it's just the way it is, but it's just, like, for me, like, a lot of what I hear and do is serious and hard and messy, and if I thought about that all the time as an empath, I wouldn't survive. And so I have to make light of things. I have to joke at times, and it's part of, like, how I get by too. Like, it is a coping mechanism for me.
100%. 100%. All right, everybody. I'm going to send this recording out later. I'll send it to you, Jesse, as well. And I will see you next time. Safe travels back home.
I'm
Bye,
bad at
everybody.
Substack, but folks can find me on the Instagram with my name if
The
that helps.
Instagram. Just not before bed.
Just not before bed. Take those breaks, folks.
Okay, bye.